Hi, and welcome to another video in my introduction to reading romance series. And in this video I want to give some suggestions for paranormal reads, and I would say this is probably a genre I have medium experience with. I started reading it a few years ago, and what I read pretty regularly, but I don't branch out a lot, so this is probably the one I have the least to say, I think. But let's get started. So first I'll talk about some series and things, and then I'll just go into general more author suggestions. So the first thing I want to talk about is something, because there's kind of tonal differences in paranormal. I mean, it's true for all books, but all romance. But I think in paranormal it's probably the most stark to me, the differences in tone. And so the first series I want to recommend is kind of campy and a little ridiculous, and it's not my favorite, but I think it's fairly good, easy reads. As the series progresses, it's getting a little odd, but yeah. So that's the Love at Stake series by Carolyn Sparks, and I own and have read 2 of the books in physical form. So the very first book in the series is called How to Marry a Millionaire Vampire, and if you want to know how campy this series is, the girl in this, she's a dentist, right? Yes. And the guy is this rich vampire, and he ends up losing one of his fangs or breaking it through really weird things, and goes to her to get it replaced, and that's how they meet. So it's really weird. But it's a fun, enjoyable read. Another book later in the series is called Vampire Mine. This is my favorite in the series. I've read it several times. The reason I say this series is a little odd is it has vampires, Vampire Mine, the guy's a vampire, the girl is actually an angel. There's werewolves, there's were-bears and were-panthers, were-everything. The vampires use artificial blood, and they have their own television network, and there's just all kinds of craziness going on. But in general, I think they're fairly enjoyable, fun reads. And then some other series that I really like that are a little more serious are the Black Dagger Brotherhood by J.R. Ward and the Night Keepers by Jessica Anderson. And I don't own physical copies of the Night Keepers, but I do own almost all of the Black Dagger Brotherhood. The very first book is Dark Lover, and then my favorite in the series is the 3rd book, Lover Awakened. And this series follows vampires, but they're a little different. They quietly coexist with humans. They're born, not made, and they're not immortal, but they do have a long lifespan, and they do have to drink blood, but it has to be the blood, for them to best survive, it has to be the blood of another vampire, and it has to be a vampire of the opposite sex. And the first book starts with the king of the vampires, Wrath, having to meet this girl named Beth and help her because she doesn't know it, but she's half vampire. And then it's your introduction to the world and everything. And the Black Dagger Brotherhood is a group of guys and warriors in this world who protect the king, and basically the stories kind of follow different members of the Brotherhood. So these are a little intense and hyper dramatic, and they usually have multiple plot lines going on. In the early books, it's alternating usually between the love story and the evil that's threatening the vampires, and then as the series continues, the world gets bigger and more things evolve. Really quick, even though I don't have copies of any of them, the Night Keepers is a series of 6 books, I believe, and it's kind of odd. It's about this prophecy about preventing the end of the world in 2012. That's when I read them. I started reading them about a month before the Mayan calendar ended, and I was I'm gonna finish them before. I didn't, in case you were wondering. I didn't finish them before, but right after. And it's just about these group of people who come together to try and prevent the end of the world, and each book is a love story, but also this battle to stop bad things from happening. There's a lot of paranormal elements, but it's not like a vampire or werewolf story like most paranormals in my experience are. It's something different. And then some series that are kind of in between, and by that I mean they're not like super serious, but they're also not as campy as like the Love at Stake series, are the Immortals After Dark by Cresley Cole, which I grabbed one of mine. It's my favorite, which is Dark Desires After Dusk. These are kind of like the Love at Stake series, where it's not just like vampires or werewolves. There's vampires, werewolves, Valkyrie, that's what they're called, just like all different kinds of beings and things existing, and they all interact, and there's like a lot of angst in these, but there's also a lot of humor. There's a character in here, her name is Nyx, and she shows up in a lot of books, and she's kind of like crazy town, but she's really fun, and Cresley Cole writes amazing stories. And then the other one is the Lords of the Underworld by Gina Showalter, and I own almost all of these, but they're all ebooks, and these are about these gentlemen who lived in the time of like the Greek gods, and they were upset because they weren't entrusted with caring for Pandora's box. A woman was, and so they like release the box and release like all of the horrors on the world and as punishment they each have to embody one of those like horrors or sins. So they're like, a demon is tied to their being, so like lust or promiscuity and like anger and lying and stuff, and so each story is their love story and coming to terms with what all of these things mean. And again, it's not like a vampire story, it's something a little different. It's more like gods and angels are involved and things like that. And there's actually a spin-off series to that as well, which I enjoy but not as much. Just like authors in general, like an author I recommend other than everyone I've already talked about would be Janine Frost. I mean, she's written a couple series, the Night Huntress series. And then just really quick, I thought I would mention authors that I haven't read but I know are really popular. So there's Nalini Singh. I know she's incredibly popular and has written a crap ton of books. I know that Jane and Sarah from the DBSA podcast like her a lot, and I've just heard a lot of good things. Even like personally, I had a friend in college that really liked her books. And then Kelly Armstrong as well is pretty popular. I do own one of her books. I own Bitten, but I've only read like the first 50 pages because I watched the TV show and I kind of wanted to separate myself from the show when I read it so I wouldn't directly compare them too much. But I know she's very popular, and like that series is about werewolves, and I assume other things get involved too, but at least right now it's predominantly a werewolf book. So those are my paranormal series and author recommendations. If you read Paranormal Romance and you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments below so other people can check them out, because like I said, I feel like I have a fairly limited experience in that like subgenre of romance, but those are what I like, and thanks for watching. Bye.